one that can see.
Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. I want to say first and foremost that I finally reached the 1,000 subscribers, or we finally reached 1,000 subscriptions here in the Nada Nation. Took about 2 years or so to get there, and to be honest with you, I didn't know if we would or we wouldn't. But I want to thank everybody that had a hand in that and everybody that supports and listens to the channel. Today, we're going to be running the gamut, as we often do here on the Days of Thunder. And what I want to talk about first is this idea of being in a prison cell, this form of dictatorship that exists where you can see the bars, you can see the prison cell, you can touch the prison cell, and the other form of dictatorship that exists where you're being fundamentally manipulated, but you can't see the bars and you can't touch the bars, but ultimately you're in a dictatorship. A lot of that has to do with the oblong box in the corner of the room, the greatest hypnotist known to man. Because at least with the internet, you can do a little fact finding, a little searching, and you have different options out there when it comes to stories. You have more than one story to see, but the news media, of course, only provides us with one vantage point. And one of the things that the news media has been talking about here lately has been this whole idea of toxic masculinity, whatever that means. And I figured out that toxic masculinity essentially boils down to this: autonomy, freedom, being able to stand on your own 2 feet. For whatever reason, the society sees this as a bad thing, and I suspect that they see it as a bad thing because the society ultimately needs cogs in the wheels to function. So that's kind of one of the things that has brought my interest back in nature and hiking and camping and flint knapping and all those sort of things. And I know that several people, or at least I know of one individual that also does the flint knapping thing, so he knows what I'm talking about here. But with nature, it is a double-edged sword, because with nature it brings a bit amount of freedom on autonomy, but at the same time, nature expects responsibility out of somebody. It's the great equalizer. Nature's no respecter of persons. And so it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, what your race, ethnicity, or gender is, nature will deal with you accordingly if you disrespect it. Well, while we're on the topic of myths, I was speaking with my friend the other day. I've mentioned him on the program before. And I don't remember the exact exchange, but I'll just read the part that's relevant. I told him, we were talking about something, and I said, well, I hope you do find someone, but I think you're going to be a little bit disappointed. It's not what it's all cracked up to be. His response was, I don't much stress about the sex. I know it will be a bit of a letdown because of my fantasy and prolonged virginity, and it has built it up on a pedestal that it won't live up to. But honestly, what I really crave is just a loyal companion who thinks I'm worth a damn and will cuddle with me. And I said, that's the part that I think you'll find to be disappointing. And that is this myth that someone will give a damn about you. This myth that someone else will fulfill you. There's a quote in Training Day where Alonzo, the antagonist, if you will, says, you got to have a little bit of dirt on you for anybody to trust you. And that's really this guy's issue, I think, because he's not dated enough women. He's not met enough women. He's not been in enough relationships to really know the red pill truths and ultimately go Mgtow, because he just lacks the knowledge. My people perish for lack of knowledge. And so that's really the problem. He still thinks that this exists. He's still in the blue pill mindset. And the fact of the matter is that, most people are not going to accept you for you, because most people never accept who they are, because they never find out who they really are. They never take the time, and particularly women. I mean, if you really think about it, I know plenty of men and have known plenty of men in the past who were very introspective and really took a deep look inside themselves. I mean, think of men like Lao Tzu and Buddha and others. And I'm not saying that it's a male or female thing necessarily, because I do think that most people never wake up enough to really do any kind of real introspection of themselves. But yet it persists. The myth persists. If I just had this person in my life or found this person, and it's just not the reality. The thing is that you can't let anybody else drive your bus. I mean, and that's really what putting your hopes in somebody else making you happy is ultimately doing. Don't let anybody else drive your bus. I'll cover this one because this is pretty quick, but it amazes me the number of women that have these anxiety disorders. I've dated and known several. They all had this terrible, debilitating anxiety, and I thought, and maybe I should have said it, but most of them had pretty easy lives. Pretty easy lives. They didn't want for anything. They drove fairly nice cars. They had educations. They certainly didn't have any anxiety when it came to the dating world because they had no trouble in that department. I mean, that they had maybe been single for 5 minutes at a time. And I just always wondered what combat zone or war zone that they had went to, or what job that they had worked that put their moral coil in jeopardy on a daily basis that caused such anxiety. And generally, it's anxiety over anything, or over anything and nothing, really. It's anxiety for anxiety's sake. Now, I want to talk for a minute on something. And I literally probably only have like a few minutes to even discuss the topic. But the topic of red pill rage. Now, this goes back to what I was saying about not letting anybody drive your bus. I know my channel, I know several other channels, might be somebody's first interaction or first exposure to Mgtow. So I'm well aware of what role I may play as a content contributor and all that. And there is a place for red pill rage. A lot of guys are waking up. A lot of guys are coming into this brand new, and they have every right to be angry and upset. The problem that I guess I see with things, or rather my concern with things, is when people get stuck in that rage stage. Now, I'm not, and I think I've brought it up before, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or therapist or any of that sort of thing. And so I can't sit here and tell you what is an adequate amount of time to feel a certain way. I think that all, again, that goes back to that introspection. And I always say this because, I mean, I think I have done this somewhat in the past, and maybe to some degree still have, shards or a smattering of that there. But ultimately, it's letting somebody else drive your bus. It's letting your life and your decisions and your emotions and your mental peace. It's handing the reins of all those things over to people that don't have your best interest in mind to start with, but also who are reckless and unaware that they even have that kind of control. It's like breaking up with somebody, or somebody breaking up with you, and you're still mad at the ex, and you have this seething hatred. Well, of course, the opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. And it's when you get to that level of apathy that you can walk away, that you're truly free. And so I only bring it up out of concern because, like I said, I don't think that it's a huge problem. There are people that come to Mgtow, and I think the vast majority of us go through that metamorphosis I talked about in another video. I think the vast majority of us, we have our time of grieving and mourning, and like I said, it's different for everybody. But the vast majority of us, I believe, come to terms with things, accept things, and then we go on about life. There is that small percentage, of course, that they stay there. And ultimately, it's going to be destructive, and it's not really going to affect anybody else. It's really only going to affect them. It's really only going to be destructive in terms of their life. So I just, and I've talked about the way stations in life, and this is another thing I can bring up here. This is another thing that I think is an important point. It's probably one of the most important things I think I've ever heard anybody say in my life. There are friends of the road and friends of the heart, and I never will forget that. A friend in college, a very wise friend, told me that phrase. The friends of the road, of course, are those people that you meet along the way, and I can't tell you how many thousands of people I've met in my life, from the time I started school till, currently, and I'm 31. So many people have come and so many people have gone, and it's just been like a revolving door of people. But then there are those people, the friends of the heart, that are always there, that are in your life, and they may not start out with you, but somewhere along the line you pick them up, and then they just stay with you throughout. And those are really the people that you should worry about, as far as their opinion of you, and cultivating those relationships. Again, it goes back to the self-reliance thing. I think it's important to be self-reliant. I think it's important to do as much for yourself as you can. But also, recognizing those people in your life that are your pals, as they say in Young Guns, that are a part of your sacred hoop, and do not break that sacred hoop. Because everybody's got that sacred hoop out there. You may not realize it, you may not think it, but you got yourself 3 or 4 buddies, then you got yourself a tribe, as they say. A lot of the problem anymore with friendships, getting away from relationships, we know that those are sort of a sham, but a lot of the problem anymore with relationships, friendships, is the hollow man culture that we deal with on a daily basis. The materialism and just the emptiness and lack of anything truly spiritual, and the lack of anything, with any sort of real depth. I mean, not to judge anybody's lifestyle, but I mean, I feel like a lot of people try to keep themselves in a sedated state, through drugs or alcohol or whatever else the case may be. And don't get me wrong, I mean, all those things can be enjoyed within moderation, within a framework. But I think that a lot of people are using those things, and it doesn't have to be drugs or alcohol. It could be materialism. It could be, going out. I mean, going out and buying things you don't need because of the dopamine hit you get, or whatever the case may be. Because we're trying to keep ourselves in a sedated state so that we don't have to do that real introspection that I was talking about, so that we can alleviate that tearing and that panging feeling in us, telling us that there is more, or telling us that maybe the path we're going down isn't the best. And I don't know how many of you guys have seen the documentary Guys and Dolls. You can watch it on YouTube. It's actually a quite fascinating documentary, and basically it's about, I think it follows like 3 or 4 guys around, and they own these real dolls. But in it, I bring it up because there's one particular statement this guy makes. He talks about how he can't really make connections with people because he'd been abandoned so much in his life by people. I think he grew up without a father, and like I said, had these revolving doors of people coming and going, relationships and everything else. But that he could bond with material things, such as the dolls, or the doll he had, or he had this poster he said in his room that he'd had for over 25 years, and it was the permanency of those material things that he was able to bond with. And I mean, that kind of says a lot about our species. It kind of says a lot about our culture. Well, once again, this has been the Days of Thunder. I do appreciate the support. And I love feedback. And anybody that has any questions that they would like me to, questions or particular subjects that they would like me to shoot their way, feel free to just leave me a message or a comment as far as what it pertains to, and I'll try to answer it or do a program on it. Other than that, anybody has any issues, let me know. We'll try to help you with them. All right. Gonna do something different today. Believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. This has been John Nada, and this has been the Days of Thunder.